I was standing at my kitchen window, watching the November frost settle on the maple trees in my backyard, when I heard the deadbolt click behind me. It wasn't the sound of someone leaving. It was the sound of someone making sure I couldn't get back in. My name is Margaret, and I'm 63 years old. I've lived in this house in Oakville, Ontario for 37 years. My husband Gerald and I bought it when our daughter Vanessa was just 2 years old. Gerald passed away 4 years ago from a heart attack, and since then, I've managed just fine on my own. I have my book club on Thursdays, volunteer at the community center on Tuesdays, and spend my weekends tending to the garden Gerald and I planted together. I wasn't lonely. People assume that widows my age must be desperate for company, but I had built a life I was proud of. I had my routines, my friends, my independence. The house was paid off. My pension was modest but sufficient. I didn't need saving. Then, 6 months ago, Vanessa called me. She was crying, which wasn't unusual. My daughter had always been dramatic, even as a child. But this time, she said her marriage was falling apart. Her husband, Brian, had lost his job as a sales manager, and they were 3 months behind on rent for their townhouse in Mississauga. They had 2 children, Emma, who was 9, and Owen, who was 7. "Mom, we just need a few weeks," Vanessa said. "Just until Brian finds something new. We can't let the kids see us lose everything." What mother could say no to that? I told her they could stay in the guest room and Vanessa's old bedroom. It would be tight, but we'd manage. I spent 2 days cleaning, bought new sheets, and cleared out closet space. I even set up the basement rec room with the old television so the kids would have somewhere to play. They arrived on a Saturday in late May. Brian barely looked at me when I opened the door. He was carrying boxes like they weighed nothing, his jaw set tight. Vanessa hugged me and whispered, "Thank you, Mom. You're saving our lives." The first week was fine. The kids were sweet and well-behaved. Vanessa cooked dinner a few times, and I enjoyed having the house feel full again. But by the second week, I noticed changes. Brian started rearranging the furniture in the living room. He said the couch would get better light by the window. I didn't argue. It was just a couch. Then Vanessa moved my recipe books off the kitchen counter because she needed space for her Instant Pot and air fryer. Again, I stayed quiet. These were small things, temporary inconveniences. By week 3, Vanessa suggested I move my bedroom down to the basement. "The kids are having trouble sleeping with you right across the hall," she explained. "They're not used to hearing someone else moving around at night. And honestly, Mom, the basement is bigger. You'd have more space down there." I stood there in my own hallway, looking at the bedroom I'd shared with Gerald for 33 years, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. But Vanessa was looking at me with those wide, pleading eyes, the same ones she'd used as a teenager when she wanted to borrow the car. "It's just temporary," she added. So I moved to the basement. I carried my clothes down in garbage bags. I slept on the pull-out couch because they'd put their storage boxes on my old bed frame. The basement had a small bathroom with a shower that barely worked, and the ceiling was low enough that I had to duck near the furnace room. I told myself it was fine. It was temporary. Family helps family. But temporary started to stretch. May became June. June became July. Every time I asked Brian about his job search, he'd grunt something about the market being tough. Vanessa stopped cooking. She stopped cleaning. The kitchen was always a mess, and when I tried to tidy up, she'd snap at me for moving her things. In August, I came upstairs one morning to find workers in my living room. Vanessa was standing there with paint samples. "What's going on?" I asked. "We're freshening up the space," she said brightly. "This beige is so depressing, Mom. We're thinking a nice sage green, very modern." "You're painting my living room?" "Our living room," she corrected. "We live here too." I wanted to say something. I wanted to remind her whose name was on the deed, but Brian was watching me from the kitchen with his arms crossed, and I could hear the kids playing upstairs. I didn't want to cause a scene. I didn't want to be the difficult mother-in-law. So I went back to the basement. By September, they'd taken over completely. My bedroom was now Vanessa's home office. My sewing room was storage for their things. They'd mounted a new television in the living room, replaced my curtains, and Brian had even started talking about upgrading the deck come spring. I ate my meals in the basement. I used the back door so I wouldn't disturb them. I started to feel like a ghost in my own home. Then, on a Tuesday in late October, Vanessa sat me down at the kitchen table. Brian was beside her. They both had that look, like parents about to tell a child something for their own good. "Mom, we need to talk about your situation," Vanessa began. "My situation? You're getting older. This house is too much for you to manage. Brian and I have been talking, and we think it's time you considered a retirement home, somewhere with support. People your age need community, activities, medical care nearby." I stared at her. "I'm 63 years old, Vanessa. I'm perfectly capable of managing my own home." "But you're not managing it," Brian cut in. "We are. We've been handling everything for months. The bills, the maintenance, the upkeep. It only makes sense that we formalize the arrangement." "Formalize?" Vanessa reached across the table and took my hand. "We want to buy the house from you, Mom. Well, not buy exactly, more like a transfer. You sign it over to us, and we'll make sure you're taken care of. There's a lovely place in Burlington, Maplewood Estates. They have bingo on Fridays." I pulled my hand away. "This is my home. Mom, be reasonable." "No." I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor. "This is my house, mine and Gerald's. You were supposed to stay a few weeks. It's been 5 months. Brian's face darkened. "We've been paying our way. You haven't paid me a single dollar." "We've been contributing," Vanessa said quickly. "Groceries, utilities, improvements to the house. Improvements I didn't ask for." "You're being ungrateful," Vanessa said, and her voice had gone cold. "We gave up our life to come help you. You were lonely and depressed after Dad died. We saved you." "I didn't need saving." Brian stood up. "This conversation is over. We'll discuss it when you're thinking clearly." They left me standing in the kitchen. My kitchen. I heard them go upstairs, heard Vanessa on the phone with someone, her voice bright and cheerful like nothing had happened. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the pull-out couch in the basement and thought about Gerald. He'd always been a careful man, organized. He'd made sure all our documents were in order, made sure I knew where everything was. The deed to the house was in a safety deposit box at the bank, both our names on it. When he died, it transferred to me automatically. I got up and went to the filing cabinet in the corner of the basement. I found our copy of the deed. I found the property tax records, all paid and current. I found Gerald's will, which left everything to me. I found the death certificate. I took photos of everything with my phone. The next morning, I went upstairs early. Vanessa was in the kitchen making coffee. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told her. "About the house." Her face lit up. "Oh, Mom, I'm so glad you're being sensible about this. I want to see the paperwork. If we're going to discuss transferring the house, I want everything in writing. I want to know exactly what you're proposing." "Of course. Brian's actually been working with a real estate lawyer. I'll have him send over the documents." "Good. I'll have my lawyer review them too." Something flickered in her eyes. "Your lawyer?" "Yes. Gerald's old lawyer, Thomas Chen. He handled our wills. I think it's only fair I have legal representation, don't you?" "Sure. Of course." But her smile had tightened. I didn't have a meeting with Thomas Chen, not yet. But I called his office that afternoon and made an appointment for the following week. I explained the situation to his assistant, and she put me through to him immediately. "Margaret," Thomas said, and I could hear the concern in his voice. "Are you safe? For now. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything verbally. And Margaret, document everything. Every conversation, every demand. Keep records." I started keeping a journal. I wrote down dates, times, conversations. I noted that Brian had changed the locks on the front door in September without telling me. He said it was for security, but he'd only given keys to himself and Vanessa. I had to use the back door. I wrote down that Vanessa had opened mail addressed to me, including my pension statements. I wrote down that they disconnected the phone line in the basement, saying they needed the jack for their Wi-Fi router. I wrote down everything. On November 3rd, I came home from my book club to find my key didn't work in the back door either. I stood there in the cold, my breath fogging in the air, and I knocked. Emma answered. Sweet Emma, with her gap-toothed smile. "Hi, Grandma. Mom said you were staying with Aunt Carol tonight." "I don't have an Aunt Carol, sweetheart." Vanessa appeared behind her. "Mom! I tried calling you. Didn't you get my message?" "What message?" "We're having the locks changed. Security upgrade. I left your new key at the real estate office. You can pick it up tomorrow." "Vanessa, let me in. It's my house." "Mom, don't make a scene in front of the children." She started to close the door. I put my hand on it. "Let me in right now." Brian appeared. "Margaret, you're upsetting the kids. We'll sort this out tomorrow. For tonight, there's a Holiday Inn on Cornwall Road." "This is my house." "Keep your voice down," Brian hissed. "The neighbors are watching." He was right. I could see Mrs. Patterson across the street, peering through her curtains. The young couple next door had come out onto their porch. "Let me get my things from the basement, at least," I said. "We'll pack them up for you," Vanessa said. "We'll bring them to you tomorrow." The door closed. I heard the deadbolt slide into place. I stood on my own porch, locked out of my own home, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 4 years. Not since Gerald died. I felt completely, utterly alone. But then I remembered what Thomas Chen had said. Document everything. I took out my phone and took a photo of the door. I took a photo of my key that didn't work. I walked around the house and photographed every window, every door. I went to my car and sat in the driver's seat, and I called Thomas. "They locked me out," I said. "Go to a hotel. Keep your receipts. I'll file an emergency motion first thing tomorrow morning. Margaret, what they're doing is illegal. This is your property. They're trespassing. They're my daughter and grandchildren. That doesn't give them the right to do this." I drove to the Holiday Inn. I paid for a room with my credit card. I barely slept. I kept thinking about my things in the basement, my photo albums, Gerald's watch that I kept in my nightstand drawer. I thought about the garden, about the maple tree we'd planted when Vanessa was born. The next morning, I met Thomas at his office. He was a small man in his 60s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a kind face. He'd handled Gerald's estate, helped us write our wills, guided me through the paperwork after Gerald died. "Show me everything," he said. I showed him the photos, the deed, my journal, the records of all the changes they'd made to the house without my permission, the text messages from Vanessa about transferring the property. The fact that I'd paid all the property taxes, utilities, and insurance for the past 5 months while they contributed nothing. Thomas made notes. Then he looked at me over his glasses. "Margaret, I can get you back in your house, but I need to know, what do you want to happen after that?" "I want them out. All of them? Including the grandchildren?" I thought about Emma and Owen. I thought about how they'd probably been told I was confused, difficult, maybe even senile. They didn't know what their parents were doing. "I want Vanessa and Brian out. I want my house back. The children can visit, but supervised. After what Vanessa's done, I don't trust her judgment anymore." Thomas nodded. "I'll file for an emergency order today. We'll get the police involved for the illegal lockout. And Margaret, you might want to prepare yourself. This is going to get ugly." It's already ugly. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, I was in a courtroom. It wasn't a dramatic television-style hearing. It was a small room with a judge, Thomas, me, and a court clerk. Vanessa and Brian weren't even there. They'd been notified, but Thomas said they probably assumed it wasn't serious. The judge reviewed the documents. She looked at the deed, the property records, my bank statements showing I'd paid every bill. She looked at the photos of the changed locks, my key that no longer worked. "This is straightforward," the judge said. "Mrs. Ashford is the sole legal owner of the property. The occupants have no legal right to exclude her from her own home. She signed the order. The police will escort you to the property and ensure you can access it. If the current occupants refuse to comply, they'll be subject to immediate removal for trespassing." It was that simple. 37 years of marriage, 37 years in that house, and it took a judge 15 minutes to confirm what I already knew. It was mine. The police met me at the house at 4:30. 2 officers, one older with gray in his beard, one younger who looked nervous. Thomas was with me. I rang the doorbell. Vanessa answered. She looked annoyed until she saw the police. "What's going on?" The older officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, we're here to enforce a court order granting Mrs. Margaret Ashford access to her property. You need to step aside and allow her entry." "This is ridiculous." "Mom, what did you do?" "I exercised my legal rights," I said quietly. Brian appeared behind Vanessa. "You called the cops on your own family? You locked me out of my own house. We were protecting our investment. We've put thousands of dollars into this place." The officer held up the court order. "Sir, according to this document, you have no legal claim to this property. Mrs. Ashford is the sole owner. You're currently trespassing." "Trespassing? We live here." "Not anymore," Thomas said calmly. "You have 24 hours to remove your belongings. If you're not out by this time tomorrow, the police will remove you and your possessions will be placed on the curb." Vanessa turned to me and I saw something in her face I'd never seen before. Pure hatred. "You're really doing this? You're throwing your own grandchildren out on the street?" "I'm reclaiming my home. You're welcome to find your own. We have nowhere to go. You should have thought of that before you tried to steal my house." The younger officer looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, if you could just step aside." Vanessa didn't move. Brian put his hand on her shoulder. "Van, let's just go inside and pack. We don't need this place. We don't need her." They stepped aside. I walked into my house, accompanied by police officers, and it felt like walking into a stranger's home. The sage green paint, the new furniture, the family photos on the wall, but none of them included me. They'd erased me completely. I went down to the basement. My things were stuffed in garbage bags in the corner. I could see they'd been going through them. Gerald's watch was gone. So were my mother's pearl earrings and my grandmother's ring. "They took my jewelry," I said to the officer. "Do you want to file a report?" I thought about it. I thought about what it would mean, pressing charges against my own daughter. But then I thought about Gerald's watch, the one I'd planned to give to Owen when he was older. I thought about how they'd taken it, along with everything else they thought they deserved. "Yes," I said, "I want to file a report." The next 24 hours were chaos. Vanessa and Brian loaded their van with their things. They didn't speak to me. When Emma tried to hug me goodbye, Vanessa pulled her away. "Don't touch her," Vanessa said. "Grandma doesn't love us anymore." I wanted to say something, to explain, but what could I say? In Emma's eyes, I was the villain who'd kicked them out. She didn't understand that they'd tried to take my home. She was 9 years old. All she knew was that she had to leave. By the next evening, they were gone. The house was empty again. But it didn't feel like my house anymore. It felt violated, changed, wrong. I spent the next 3 days scrubbing. I repainted the living room back to beige. I moved my bedroom back upstairs. I threw out the new curtains and rehung my old ones. I ripped up the rental agreement paperwork I found in Vanessa's office, the one that listed Brian and Vanessa as primary residents and me as a dependent occupant. They'd been planning this for months, maybe from the very beginning. Thomas helped me file a restraining order. Vanessa had been sending me dozens of text messages, some begging, some threatening. She said I'd regret this. She said I'd die alone. She said the kids would forget I ever existed. Maybe she was right about that last part. It's been 3 weeks now. The house is quiet again. I have my routines back. Book club on Thursdays, volunteering on Tuesdays. But it's different now. I know what my daughter is capable of. I know that when she looked at me, she didn't see her mother. She saw an obstacle, an inconvenience, someone to be managed and ultimately discarded. The lawyer fees cost me $4,000. The locksmith, another $300 to change all the locks again. I never got Gerald's watch back. They claimed they didn't know what I was talking about, said I must have misplaced it before they moved in. But I have my house. I have my independence. I have my dignity. Mrs. Patterson from across the street brought me a casserole last week. She said she'd seen what happened, said she was sorry she didn't speak up sooner. She told me she'd noticed Vanessa treating me poorly for months, relegating me to the basement, making me use the back door. "I should have said something," she said, "but I didn't want to interfere with family business." I told her it was okay, but I wish she had. I wish someone had looked at me, standing in my own driveway using the back entrance like a servant, and asked if I was all right. I called Vanessa's number yesterday. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to hear her voice. Maybe I wanted to apologize, though I'm still not sure what I'd be apologizing for. The number was disconnected. I called my grandson Owen's school to see if they'd transferred yet. The secretary couldn't tell me anything due to privacy laws, so I don't know where they are. I don't know if the kids are okay. I don't know if Vanessa tells them bedtime stories or if Brian found a new job. I only know that they're not here, in my home, slowly erasing me from my own life. Last night, I sat in my bedroom, the one I shared with Gerald for 33 years, and I cried, not because I regretted what I did, but because I mourned what I'd lost. Not the house. I never lost the house. But I lost my daughter. Maybe I never really had her at all. This morning, I called a different lawyer. Not Thomas, but someone who specializes in estate planning. I'm rewriting my will. The house will go to a charity when I die, one that helps homeless families. It seems fitting, somehow. Vanessa won't get a single brick. She already tried to take it all while I was still breathing. I won't give her the chance to profit from my death, too. People tell me I was too harsh. My neighbor's daughter, who heard the story through the grapevine, said I should have been more understanding. They were struggling, she said. Family is supposed to help each other. But help is a two-way street. Help doesn't mean erase. Help doesn't mean steal. Help doesn't mean lock someone out of their own home and convince yourself you're doing them a favor. I'm 63 years old. I'm in good health. I could live another 20, 30 years. And I'll spend those years in my house, the one Gerald and I chose together, the one we made a home. I'll spend them surrounded by my things, my memories, my independence. I'll spend them knowing that I stood up for myself when it mattered most. And if that makes me the villain in my daughter's story, then so be it. At least I'm the hero in my own. There are lessons here, hard ones that I learned too late but want to share with anyone who might be facing something similar. First, set boundaries immediately. The moment someone moves into your home, even family, establish clear rules about what's yours and what's shared. Write it down if you have to. Don't let kindness become permission for them to take over. Second, document everything. I wish I'd started keeping records from day one. Every change they made, every conversation, every promise broken. Documentation is power when things turn legal. Third, know your rights. I owned this house outright. The deed was in my name, but I let them make me feel like a guest in my own home because I didn't want to be difficult. Know what you're legally entitled to, and don't be afraid to enforce it. Fourth, don't mistake accommodation for love. I moved to the basement because I loved my daughter and wanted to help, but real love doesn't demand that you diminish yourself. Real love doesn't take your bedroom and call it temporary. And finally, protect yourself financially and legally before you need it. Have your documents organized. Know where your deed is, your will, your insurance policies. Keep copies somewhere safe. I was lucky that Gerald had been so thorough, but not everyone has that advantage. I hope no one else has to learn these lessons the way I did. I hope that when you help your family, they remember it's help, not ownership. I hope they remember that your kindness is a gift, not a weakness to exploit. But if they forget, if they try to take what's yours and call it love, then I hope you remember something else. You have the right to say no. You have the right to your own home, your own space, your own life. You have the right to stand up, even when the person you're standing up to is someone you love. Because sometimes the only way to save yourself is to be willing to let them go.